Into the Blaring Yonder, a short story. The narrator comforts his friend, a lovelorn hot air balloonist. The inclinations of the heart make no compact with the dread realism of natural infirmity. Even the buoyant uplift of romance and the low-density carousal of a wicked gondola cannot soothe a terminally lonesome man. Thus at least I am thinking, as the forlorn arrangements of poor Jack Blatter idles down at the bar this grimly balmy night in the quiet corners of the Emerald Star Hotel. How goes the hot air, I am wondering. It has been a perfectly straightforward couple of days. The sun has been behaving and the windy trundle has not stirred so much as a mite of dust from the thirsty land. Do not ask, says Jack, or Leaky as he is known. No, say I, and opine in a friendly sort of way that surely the drafts have been swelling and there are lots of visitors in town. Leaky, that is to say, operates a hot air balloon and dangles it over the wide earth for the inspection of paying trippers. With the merry weather and busfuls of intrepid city dwellers coming forth, I would have thought the lofty canyons of the air would reward him with many takers. It's not that, however, he saith. He straightens himself in his seat. 3 sips on a beer and he has to run to the men's room, which, by the way, is why he is known as Leaky, an unfortunate condition for a man caught short 3,000 feet in the sky. No, says I, and straightway surmise that the reason for his relative gloom has more to do with his trembling heartstrings, and in particular his generally known affections for a certain girl named Liz Maybe, from the slow-paced mining towns up north. I tell him that I'll hear it anyway as long as he buys me a schooner of the best when it comes his turn. I like poor Jack. I am myself mortified of heights, and so hold aviators, even casual ones, all those who venture into the Blaring Yonder, in wide open esteem. Liz maybe? I ask, and he nods, downcast. You'll never believe it, he tries me. Try me, I says, willing anyway. And then he proceeds to relate what had befallen in the several days before. A week back, he reminded me, sitting in this very spot, he was resounding with an optimistic charm. He had explained how life was wretched and one-dimensional, living so alone on his own. Then he met Liz Maybe, with her blonde bob and kissable lips at a barn dance in Bachelor, an aptly named abode. And the silent strings of longing soon became a zither of yearning melodies. You remember how I was once a sponge full of vinegar, do you not? He says to me. I says, I do. And then, just the week before, he hits upon a swift resolve. Throwing all eventualities, regardless of how terrible, into the winds of broken fortune, he announces to me after a beer or two a bold intention. I shall ask her to marry me, narrator, he says to me, blocking his chin square with brave determination. I look at him. I agree, it is a glorious plan. Yet here we are a week later, and he is obviously caught in the doldrums, and so I hazard that the plan goes not so glorious after all. I do not care to poke a sore. Everything says, go easy. I give him plenty of time to find some soothing words. Most everyone believes that Liz Maybe is just a pretty tease with her fine bones and dolly demeanour, her button nose and understated country loveliness. Most everyone believes, on the other hand, that Leaky is a spectacle of loose ambition. He'd be better off with a mail-order bride from Thailand. He cannot gauge his rural girls any more than hold his liquids. Before his tale begins, he heads off to the men's room again, and I'm wondering if it is going to be a tragedy or just a dire misadventure. You would think, I think, that a man with a hot air balloon had the means to impress a lady. but I guess it takes a special sort of woman to care for a man given to such frequent micturition at whatever altitude. He comes back and says again that I'm not going to believe it, and I say, "Try me. I'm the narrator. I've heard it all before." "Very well," he agrees, and it is already his turn to order me a schooner of the best. He then explains that he had a daring scheme. His plan is to take the woman of his wanting, to wit, Liz Maybe, aloft one sunny day. I think it's a nice beginning, obvious in its romantic leanings. As long as the girl is not airsick, it could perhaps make her dizzy and inspired. Then, gazing out at the wondrous overview, he would pop the question, getting down on his gallant knee, and show her the ring he bought at the jewellery store in restless pleasure, especially for the occasion. As an urgent feature of this design, he would then relent from all beverages for 8 hours beforehand, lest he got caught busting in the middle of the flight and suffered that indignity again. It has happened before, veering into the great blue, a basket full of trippers or some female prospect in his eye, when suddenly nature calls. Blatter is an unfortunate surname at the best of times, but even more so for a man with the habit of leaking. All he has to do is look at a glass of water or a cup of steaming tea or irrigation channels on a map, and he feels like a wet release. Anyway, this was his design. Smooth the path into the clouds for his gorgeous beau, carry her aloft, and then, when the courage came to him, propose that she becomes his Mrs. Blatter, and they make a nuptial tryst as the balloon floats across the rectangles of canola and sheep farms below. But evidently this design comes unstuck in unexpected ways, and he's very slow to get to the plot line. It did not go well. I urge him on. "There we are, narrator," he says. "It's a beautiful day." It is in fact Wednesday, and as I recall, it was indeed a sunny one. Wednesdays can be particularly sunny sometimes, and this was no exception. It is in fact an ideal day for hot ballooning, as I recall it. The dawn is crisp and new, the air is as still as a china kettle. The currajongs have got the warbles, and the wildflowers are in bloom. As pretty as a native orchid comes Miss Liz Maybe, and she meets Leaky at the appointed time, smiling and nubile in her mauve skirt and feminine disposition. When Leaky looks at her, his heart turns to caramel, and he supposes that it is a blessed dawn full of a lifetime's promise. She seems in any case to like him, and has not said no to his company once or twice. They drive out to the lakeside for a picnic, they catch a movie at the Elegant Ridge Deja View, that widescreened hotspot for forthcoming lovers. "You're looking nice this morning, Liz," he says to her, and she almost blushes. He then shows her that he is a man with hands. He untangles the ballooning, creases all the folds, and sets up the complex operation. At every point he gives her authoritative directions. There is the danger, of course, that a woman might imagine a balloonist is an airhead. He wants to assure her he is a practical man. A hot air balloon is no mere wimple. It is a manly responsibility and a feat of engineering and a long list of safety checks, and he could assure her, furthermore, that those who regulate such things do not let just any fool carry unharnessed civilians high into the sky. No, you have to be a man of good standing. You have to be sane and solvent, industrious and solid. In short, hot air balloonists he is employing are by definition good citizens, handy with tools, professional in their preparations, and by extension as marriageable as a plumber or a realtor or a fitter and turner if it comes to that. She seems intrigued. She asks all the right questions about the basket and the ropes and the big bottle of propane. He explains the dynamics of hot oxygen. She nods and smiles and seems to understand. day, as he says, is salubrious, and in a very short while up they go. It is certainly an exhilaration of levity. Woomph! He lights the relevant nozzles. The bag fills with airy expansion, and by the sheer force of physics, they lift off and leave the tough-skinned earth behind. Since I have not had the pleasure myself, Leakey stresses to me the undaunted scintillation that can overcome a passenger in that little gondola the first time they escape the savage pull of gravity. He does not say so, but he suggests that it is almost erotical, since it can make your inner organs swoon with drift. Ladies often grip hold. The flap of the breeze burrows under the hair of the nape of their neck. It is a welcome fancy, an adventure in transport, a beautiful transgression. And there is Leakey, the man in control. As I say, I am thinking a man with a hot air balloon has the means to impress a lady. And Leakey says she is. She holds up her chin and sort of squeals a soft murmur with uplifting excitement. The earth in its meagre vantage, meanwhile, can be a dusty and squalid place. But when you rise up above it, as Leakey says, it is entirely like an oriental rug. Trees become balls of fine texture. Streets and lanes and fences become the many threads of weft. The horizons open up and fill with a shimmering haze. Rough plotted paddocks become squares of tidy fabric. It is a weightless vision. It is a wonderment the birds share amongst themselves. It is the purview of angels. It is a winged epiphany. It is a cloth of aeriform splendour. It occurs to me then that probably no one quite knows the wide-angled riverlands like this poor Jack Bladder. They lift in his bag of hot air into the bright clear sky from the park near the tile factory. In a moment they are over the rooftops. Then they catch a quick pillar of gentle swirling, and away they go, over the town, over the bridge, over the river, over the forest, off into the hazy forever. Liz maybe stands at the rails and looks out at the small world. Gee, she says, I never realised how the valleys are all framed by the King William Ranges. Topography. You can pick up a few knots, you know, Leakey assures me, once you get a bolt of the blue. Then you can travel. You can travel out over the salty plains of Kurlwa and the greener spread of Banning Flats. You can travel out and see the marshy river bends where tracks and access roads seem like veins under ancient skin. You can drift swift over mobs of sheep and then the jade-pocked irrigation squares growing cucumber, defined by long races of silver glistening in the morning sun. You can gaze down upon the red soil. You can watch the sparse nothingness unfold. If the wind is with you, you can sail off over quaint quintessence and see where the open cut scars the unforgiving ground. You can sail all the way up to Parsons Hill, undulating and placid in its hunger. You can survey the curly culvert of the Murrumbidgee, follow it all the way to Yakandanda. The dry contours reveal themselves. The highways of man seem like very modest achievements. On a good day, Jack and his basket full of trippers might see the whole countryside like a quilt of distant endeavour hung upon the firmer shapes of old geology. On other days, for the novelty, they float down as far as Ugly Reef and stare into the gaping black mine shafts dug by greedy hands. It all goes smooth, with vast vistas, provided Leakey does not have to put his basket down by a roadside for a piddle. On this day, this Wednesday, that is not the issue. You know, Liz, he says to her over the rush, feeling the ring of hope within his pocket, I should really like to know more about you. She is looking down upon a paddock full of cows. She turns about and smiles, and Leakey notices the utter cuteness of her nose and dimples. "I tell you, narrator," he says to me, "she is one good-looking girl." "Oh, I know," I says, "I know." But he then relates, as they drift among the low-hanging moisture of morn, alone as they are in the Blaring Yonder, she senses perhaps the direction of his ways and decides to be frank about her own beginnings. She seems uncomfortable at first. "There's something you should know about me, Jack," she says. Jack pulls on a balloon string and checks his compass. "What is that, Liz?" he asks. "Well," she says, "you see, I'm not really like other girls." He sees this as an opening for flattery. "I know you're not, Liz," he saith. "You are certainly different to me." He mustered some debonair. "Or not really like other people even," she continued then. "No?" "No." The balloonist at this point reckoned on a hasty resolution before he lost his nerve. A bit of roundabout chatter might loosen the occasion and soften the familiarities, but he had that ring at the ready and might drop to his knee at any moment and say, "Will you?" The balloon, in fact, is steady. It is the conditions he is hoping for. She marvels at the broad land, sighs with surprise at the wonderful sensation, seems impressed at his navigational prowess. "Things are different, you see," she says, "where I come from." "Oh?" "Yes," she said. She came from the north, but was that cause for discrimination? "Look, Liz," he says, and he insists he is a man with expanded understandings. He insists it also to me. "You are, Jack, I know," I says to him. But then he explains. She starts revealing some strange geography. "Have you ever been up to Nibbler's Lint?" Jack asks me, and I say I have not. It is an outpost for ugly enterprise. The mines there smell of sulphur. He says it is a desolate place. He says it is all rocks and stunted ghost gums. And out the back are mountain ranges so bleak that no one has bothered to give them names. "Okay," I say. "I get the picture." "Well," he says, she looks at me and tells me about this mountain. "At the back of Nibbler's Lint." "Yes, at the back of Nibbler's Lint. Only worse than that." "Worse?" "Listen, Jack," I say to him, "a girl's background is not really all that important in the bigger scheme of things, and..." But he cuts me off and says it is not what she is getting at. In this particular mountain, a mountain with no name, Liz maybe is saying to her admirer there aloft and swinging in the breeze, there is a hole, an entryway if you will, and it leads deep underground. The balloonist is looking puzzled, but still on top of things at this stage. The balloon just drifts and makes a platform for his romance. He still has the ring fiddling in his fingers, nervous and eager. He is thinking to himself, "Damn it, Jack, just get down on your knees and pop it to her now before she spoils the moment." But she sure spoils the moment, narrator. I can tell you, he tells me. Because this hole in the ground, she is saying to him, is not just any hole in the ground in a strange mountain out the back of Nibbler's Lint. No, this is a gateway, an entry, a door into another realm. "Realm?" he asks her. "Well, a city," she says. "It's called Reptilia, Jack," she says to him. "You've probably never heard of it." "Have you ever heard of it, narrator?" He asks me, and I say I have not, even though I have heard it all. I explain, however, that even though I am the narrator, there are things below the surface even I don't understand. "Reptilia," he stammers to his bow. "Yes," says Liz maybe. "It's a city." "A city?" "Yes," she says. "For lizard people." Lizard people. She's embarrassed to be saying so, but says yes. I decided it's my turn for the drinks, but first I say to him, as gently as I dare, "Now, listen, Jack, it is awfully unfair, it seems to me, that if a girl is not obliging to your warm affections, all she has to say is something pre-prepared, such as 'I am sorry,' rather than concocting some tale that insults a bucket load of bull dust, if you're asking me. Who would have thought that Liz Maybe would be so cruel to you up there?" "But," says the balloon man, "she turns around to me, I swear." Swearing, I always say, is time for drinks. I go and get us new schooners, saying, "Hold on, Jack, I'm getting thirsty." Is Jack high on helium? Does he need a story the shape of an iguana to save face among his friends? It is quiet in this corner of the Emerald Star. The regulars are there in their regular array. The barman is polishing the stainless steel again. He pours me frothy ones. The decor is olden times. There is a wall of fancy liqueurs with a mirror base behind, and I can see the lonesome aviator in it as I'm paying. I'm thinking, poor Jack, and can understand why his balloon seems so deflated. Then I go back and start saying, "Well, Jack, I hope you told her whatever, because if a girl does not feel like being requited, then all she has to do is say so, in my humble opinion." Jack says he says so. He drops the ring from his sweaty palm into the fluff of his pocket, and he starts to say to Liz Maybe, "Listen, Liz, all you have to say is that you do not really care for me. I can take it. I can understand. Many girls have said it to me oftentimes." He says the balloon lurched at that inopportune instant just then, and he had to do the right corrections. "We're over the dairy farms near Barrymore, and the cows are mooing far below," he reports. "Even so, Jack," I say. I'm sort of cross on his behalf. I like Jack, as I say, and other than his leaky ways, I am sure he would make a handy husband. But perhaps I'm thinking a mail-order bride from Thailand might not mess up his intentions in the way the local girls all seem to do. Reptilia, a city of lizard people, under an unnamed mountain out the back of Nibbler's Lint. I am the narrator of this story, Jack, I say, and now I have heard it all. "But I swear," says Jack, "I swear." He swears that Liz Maybe seems very sweet and has kissable lips, but she told him that there is this race of lizard people, you see, and when she turned around again, and glancing down at the mooing cows in their verdant pasture, and as the sun filters its frilly beams in the pure blue air and the wicked gondola rocks softly beneath the big bag of heated expansion, she looks at him and flutters her eyelids, just for him that morning. And then and there, her eyelids part. They part just like a lizard, like the primitive flutter of a shy goanna. And then and there, too, her tongue flicks out, a lizard's tongue, blue and sharp and darting. "I swear," says Jack, "I swear." And this is why he comes into the Emerald Star Hotel looking like a misery guts with his heartstrings chopped into useless pieces. The vast sky is a mistress to brave men, and even though his habit of incontinence might suggest a timid trait, Jack Bladder is not a shrinking wedge of indecision. I myself am afraid to get up onto a ladder. Every week, or whenever the weather maps go unperturbed, he climbs into the insubstantial sweep above us and, in nothing but a basket, points out to his passengers the tall borders of the King William Ranges. He defies the windy trundle. He treats the laws of gravity like a fruit picker from Mauritius. All the same, a hero of hot air needs comfort in the nights of life as much as any man. "I told you would not believe it," he says to me. Liz Maybe says to him, "I can tell you, Jack, up here, because no one will believe you down there." Ballooning brings out the candid truth, the improbable reality, the round earth in the square map. "So I suppose," I say to him, being obvious, "that you changed your mind about this, Liz Maybe." I surmise that different ways is one thing, but different items of cryptobiology is something different again. Leakey reaches into his pocket and puts the wasted ring down upon the table. He thereafter has the facial lineaments of a disappointed being. What a shocking Wednesday. I think I might say something smart about fish in the sea, or birds in the air, or clouds on the horizon, or stars in the Milky Way, or lizards under a rock. But I let it rest. I even think of saying, so that is what the name Liz is short for, but I'm certain he has accumulated that already. All I can do is offer to get the next schooner of the best out of simple disbelieving mercy, and tell him again how there must surely be brave-hearted ladies, and warm-blooded ones at that, who might admire a man who spends gentle mornings climbing around with his adventurous fortitude and lack of liquid self-control among those lofty canyons of the loveless atmosphere.